This video will walk us through placing the battery on a Dexcom G6. We'll walk through the steps first, and then we'll go ahead and do it. So first you need to write down that serial key because we're going to grind that area away to expose the battery. Then we're going to disconnect that contact and flip it up, just that part, get the battery out of there, flip that contact down, put a new battery in, and then add some epoxy resin to waterproof it. Then we'll hook it to the Other Pancreas. Now, if you're not familiar with the Other Pancreas, you should check it out. It's an artificial pancreas system that's made up of just these three components. So the Dexcom communicates directly to the phone. The phone decides exactly how much insulin to give you every 5 minutes, and then it tells the DIY insulin pump what to do. And it's super simple. With it, you should be able to stop counting carbs and shouldn't have to worry about meal announcements. So let's go ahead and change the battery here. So these are the supplies you're going to need, or the tools you're going to need. There should be a link to all these where you can buy them on Amazon. And you can decide what you actually need and don't need after you see the video. But this is what we're going to use in the video today. So let's go ahead and start off here. We're going to just grind away the battery part of the transmitter here. Okay. Now you need to be careful because there are some tabs right here that we need to not grind off. Okay, so we're actually going to only do this part of the battery, and then we'll get the rest with the drill bit here. Okay, so we'll zoom past or speed past this, but we're just going to start off here and grind away. You can already start to see that battery contact there, so let's keep on going. Okay, so we actually just ground off part of the that contact there. All right, now that's okay because we only need that one little spot. We don't need the rest of the contact, but we need to be very careful not to grind that part off. So we're gonna do that with the Dremel here and just a normal drill bit. Okay, you can see that we started moving that contact a little bit there. All right. Again, we need to be really careful not to break that off. Okay. So we're going to try here to turn it up very carefully. Okay, see it's kind of moving it there. So that's our contact that we need to make sure we do not break. So we turn it up right there. And then we'll clear out these edges around the battery so we can pop the battery out. The better we can clear out these edges, the more likely it is that we'll be able to easily pop the battery out. Okay? Okay, so if this contact stays connected, then you'll need to break it right here or cut it right here. And that's why I usually will use this. It broke on its own, so I didn't cut it here, but you'll just use that on the Dremel and cut that spot right there, okay? Being careful not to cut through the outside of the battery. Okay, it's okay to cut through the battery, but that's going to make it so prying it out is a little more difficult. So in order to pop the battery out, there are some contacts on the bottom that we need to be mindful of so we don't break those. So we're going to pop over to this video really quickly. This shows you the contacts beneath. What we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole right there, put a screwdriver in and pry it up and see how those are bending and flexing, and then get another screwdriver and pop that off. Okay, so over here we need to be very careful to not break this part here. Okay, that's where this negative contact hooks to the rest of the board. It's okay if we break it to these weak spots here, and those are where the spot welds are as well. But we just need to be extra careful here. So that's why we're going to pull it out in the direction shown here. Okay, so it's going to pry. We'll pry it up this way. Does that make sense? And those flex, you can pop that off, and hopefully that'll prevent it from breaking that little spot down here. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to try to put the drill hole right about here. Okay, so we've got our contact on this side. We want to drill a hole pretty close to this because that's going to give us the most leverage to pull this out. Okay, once we get through, we don't want to go too far, obviously, but just far enough that we can then get our screwdriver in, like so, push it through, okay, and then we're going to pry this up. And I think I actually took off a little too much of the corners here because this is the casing that's coming up. All right. Right there. So that's all right. If you get the casing coming up, then you can use your pliers and pull the rest of it and empty the battery out, or you can have some good leverage to pull this. Again, we're going to try to pull this side next to this tab up first, because that's going to give us the best chance of not breaking our contact down there on the bottom. Okay. Now I'm just emptying out the inside of the battery, as you can see, and just trying to get this lip so that we can pull this up and out. Okay. I obviously pulled this the wrong direction and ended up prying it this way. Hopefully that contact is still there. Okay. And the fact that it's not coming out makes me believe that it is. So we're going to try to get this screwdriver under in the direction that we showed you in the video. Okay, pry it up just a little bit so we can get under there, because we're going to try to separate that. Okay. Now you'll notice here that the contact stayed there and it broke at that weak point. Okay. And then in here we still have that contact there. Okay. So jumping back to this, it broke here, which is okay because it didn't break here. That's what you need to make sure it doesn't break off. If it breaks off and you lose this connection down here, then you'll need to, I don't know if drill is the right word, probably get down there somehow and put some solder in so you can connect that. You can make a good connection between this metal here, this contact, and the bottom of the battery. All right. So hopefully you can keep that intact though, so it's connected. So we're just going to fold it down just a little tiny bit. We'll fold it down the rest of the way with the rest of the battery. It should be clean, but make sure the top of this doesn't have a bunch of gunk on it, because that's where your contact is going to be made. Same story over here. But on this one, we're going to bend it down. Okay, again, very carefully, because we don't want to break this. Okay. Now you also need to make sure that this thing doesn't reach past this lip here. Okay, because that is where it gets the negative contact. So we've got our positive contact and negative. You don't want those two touching. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to, oh, but that doesn't look good. See, we just lost this as we pulled it out. This connection here snapped off. Okay, you need to be really careful not to snap that off. Okay, so be a lot more careful than I just was. New battery. Positive side goes up, negative side goes down, and we have our little metal piece right there. It's going to create a little bit of force, but not too much. And we'll just put it in. Okay. Now we have a good connection on the positive side with this little guy here, and the negative side on the bottom. All right, now you don't have to check the voltage here, but if you want to, you can get a voltmeter, change it there, and put those contacts just right there and right there, and you should get about 0.2 or 0.19 on one of these cheap voltmeters. Okay, so again, you don't have to do that. If it hooks up to your phone, you're just fine. But if you'd like to do that before putting the epoxy resin on, then that's a great time. So I actually went ahead and I was able to find this little piece that we had snapped off. Okay, so we're going to use the epoxy resin, the same stuff we're using to waterproof, to get this stuck back on. Okay, so try really hard not to snap these off. Right, they're tiny. It could be hard to find, but you need it to hold your transmitter to your sensor. So we're going to do the epoxy resin. This is just a two-part thing, half epoxy, half resin, 1-to-1 ratio. This one's nice because you can just squeeze them all out at the same time. So we'll pop this out. We'll go ahead and put them down here and then mix it thoroughly. Okay. Once that's mixed, we're going to go ahead and put it on the battery. We're focusing on the cracks between the plastic and the battery. Be very mindful of bubbles, because if you have bubbles, particularly around the edges, those can open up, and then it's as though you didn't even put the stuff on, because there's a nice little chasm where the bubble was. If you cracked anything around here, make sure you put epoxy resin in there as well. We're trying to waterproof here. Okay, so now that we put that in, we're going to try to get this guy. Okay, got that guy back in, and we'll add a little more epoxy resin so that all stays. So this should set within 5 minutes, but it won't fully cure for, I think, 24 hours. Maybe it's 2 hours. You can see over here on this side, we've got this little lump coming down. As it dries, it gets harder and harder to come off, or to get off. So I would recommend watching that as it's drying, or as it's curing, so you can get that off. And obviously wash your hands quickly, because it'll cure onto your hands. While that's curing, we're going to go ahead and hop over to the Other Pancreas. We'll put in the transmitter ID here that, again, hopefully you wrote that down. If you didn't write it down, if you're using the same transmitter you were using before on the Other Pancreas, it'll remember that for you. Or if you're using one of your past transmitters, it should remember that in there as well. In this case, it's a fresh install. So we'll just put the transmitter number in, okay, and hit OK. At the top here, you can see that it's scanning. Okay, you've got two Bluetooth symbols. The top one is for the Dexcom, and then the next one is for the pump. So when it's flashing those that wireless signal there, that means it's scanning. So within the next 5 minutes, it'll find that. So we'll go ahead and fast forward to that. Okay, so those diamonds mean that it's connecting, and then once they go solid, that means it's successfully connected. So now it's going to get a reading, and it should pop up and says sensor end. Okay, so Dexcom, when it reaches the end of its life, the end of that 3-month period, it won't start a new session for you. So we've got two options. One, we can come here to the settings and then to glucose, and we can say use unfiltered data. Okay, this makes it so we just use the raw data and not Dexcom's calibrations or anything. The benefit to that is you get your glucose faster, about 10 minutes faster, because Dexcom is actually holding on to your data to see if there's any spikes, any noise, and then it smooths that out and filters it. So if you use unfiltered data, you get the data faster, but you don't have that filtering. And so you can have more noisy stuff. Now, the Other Pancreas is going to pay attention to that noise, and it won't dose if anything's exceptionally noisy. But you do have that option there. You'll still calibrate, but it will use the Other Pancreas's calibration logic rather than Dexcom's. Okay, so you can check that and then calibrate, and you should be good to go. The other thing you can do, which is what we're going to do here, is we can click this. Now, this tells you that this Dexcom is 117 days old. Okay, if we come here to Manage CGM, in this menu, we have an option for reset transmitter clock. Okay, if you click the eye, that'll explain what that is. Basically, it's going to tell Dexcom to reset to the beginning, and by doing that, you'll be able to use Dexcom's calibrations and everything, and it will think that it's 0 days old. So we'll go ahead and click this button, and what it's going to do is when it connects the next time, we can see the timer up here. That's in 3 minutes. Okay, in 3 minutes, it will tell Dexcom to reset itself, and then it will start scanning to make a new connection, because that 5-minute window changes when you reset. So we're going to fast forward to that point, and we'll be right back. All right, now it's connecting, and we're connected. And we should get a message down here at the bottom saying sensor end, because we're not in a session right now. So you're just going to click here on new sensor. Obviously, after you've put your sensor in and you've connected the transmitter to the sensor, then you'll click new sensor, and it'll start that 2-hour countdown for the calibration, and you'll be good to go. All right, and that's how you do it. So if you have any questions, let me know, and hopefully this will help you get a little bit more life out of your Dexcom transmitters. Good luck.